Today we are in the field and talking about my experiences with the Nikon Z7 II over the past couple of months. The Nikon Z7 II is the big brother to the Z6 II that I've been using pretty much since it came out. The Z7 II, where it comes into play is when you need larger files. So if you're a landscape photographer and you know you're going to be making those big prints, or today we're out here snowboarding, and when people go off jumps, you kind of know where they're going to be, but sometimes they spin in different directions. So having the ability to crop in a little bit is definitely something that's helpful for me out here. The Nikon Z7 II, in my opinion, is the best landscape and just general out in the world travel photography camera available on the market today, especially when paired with the lenses from the Z Series. The Z Series lenses and the glass that they've been designing for it is just absolutely phenomenal. I've said it 1,000 times at this point, but the 24-70 f2.8 for the Z Series is my favorite lens of all time. And you've seen examples of this all over the world over the past couple of years on this channel. The autofocus has been greatly improved, even with the last firmware that came out just recently. The IAF has become even better than it was. 493 autofocus points, which means you can trust the camera to make sure that your shots are in focus. Even if you're focusing on really fast moving things, know that the camera does have your back. We're gonna do a quick little sequence burst here. Oh! Another thing that's very important to myself, at least, hopefully it has some relevance in your life, is the buffer speed, both for taking lots of images that if there's something happening and you're taking lots of frames, that you don't want to hit that wall. Fortunately, with the two processors in here, you will never hit that wall. The buffer clears almost alarmingly quickly for such a high megapixel camera. For me, as a wedding photographer, I do a lot of video coverage on wedding days as well, and that is really, really important to me. And something that I use a lot in my Nikon cameras is that I shoot medium raw mode. If I'm at a wedding day, if I know I'm going to be taking lots of frames, I will be happy to shoot that on medium raw, which means I'm shooting a megapixel file that's not the full megapixels of this camera. At an event that I don't require the full megapixels, it's nice to have that versatility. As far as workflow goes, as far as downloading cards at the end of the night, if you're at a wedding and you shoot 4,000 frames, it's just a better experience overall, and I've never found myself needing a 45 plus megapixel file from a wedding day. So know that that is an option within this camera if that's something that concerns you a little bit. Let's head back to the mountains and I'll see you again in a moment. Out here today with the Nikon Z7 II, photographing everyone as they come down the enchanted forest around here at Chatter Creek. Here comes Michael.
I'm gonna do big pow.
Big pow. I should also mention it's negative 23 degrees right now, and we have this camera out and it's been performing great all day. So shout out to the fact that this can just operate in cold conditions. Even though if you're reading the manual, it might say something like operating temperature 0°C to 40 degrees Celsius. Know that it's not a problem. Just maybe keep it clean. Don't get it too wet when you're out here. So a few other great things with this camera from the wedding photographer hat. It has 2 card slots, which means you have redundancy as you're doing your photography coverage on a wedding day. One card is an XQD card, which I really enjoy because that means that card reads really quickly when I get home at the end of the night, and I can just download my cards a lot quicker. Also, maybe use solid state drives to download too, and things happen really, really quickly. You can also attach a vertical battery grip to this camera if that is something that interests you. I personally find that the ergonomics, maybe a quick shout out to the Nikon Ergonomics and how this camera really does, coming from a DSLR background and moving into the mirrorless series, this really feels familiar to my hands. But if using a grip is something that's going to make this camera even more ergonomic for you, know that that is an option.
Dropping.
Nice.
Yeah, buddy.
The way that this camera is a little bit different than the Nikon Z6 II, and one of the things that I found incredibly useful is that the base ISO of the Z7 II is 64, which means if I'm using a lens like this 50-1.2, that I can be shooting at 1.2 a lot more often, which is an aesthetic that I love the look and the feeling of these images. And maybe to speak to a little bit more of that, the files that come off of this camera, the dynamic range, the way the files just react the way that you would expect, and that you have pretty much, as long as you shoot it somewhat correctly, you have pretty infinite leverage over what you can do with these files. The in-body image stabilization, or the IBIS, is really incredible in this camera, and hand holding something like this 51.2 is totally fine. When we're out in the field, we rarely have time to set up shots into tripod shots. We're not filming usually feature films of any sort. So having a camera that can keep up with that is really important to us, and having the IBIS that's in this, especially when stacked with some of the lenses like the 70-200 that has additional VR within it, really does make this camera incredibly useful. Here's an example of me hand holding. This is from the Z6 II, which is the same system to my knowledge within this camera. This is me hand holding through a teleconverter at 600 millimeters. So let that be a bit of a testament to the IBIS, and having this ability both is incredibly useful as just a tool for a person out there creating video content. And what this means is that I don't have to carry tripods with me out when I'm going to try to find some moose in the wilderness. But you probably should, if it's a photo trip, you should bring a tripod. I have with me my fisheye lens. This was the first lens that I ever purchased as a photographer. I had my kit lens. I guess I had a 50, the cheap 50. And then my goal, my dream was to get enough money to buy a fisheye lens, because I just grew up in the skateboard, snowboard culture. And a lot of the content from those magazines was all fisheye. Another way the Nikon Z7 II is a little bit different than the Z6 II. If you're shooting 4K 60 frames a second, which this camera does, there is a very, very small crop factor to the 4K 60 in this, where there is a 1.5 times crop factor to the Z6 II. I should also mention that there is a paid upgrade available if you are interested in shooting either ProRes RAW or Blackmagic RAW. That's available for you as well. Something that's very important when you're out doing snowboard and ski photography is the weather sealing of this camera. And we had absolutely no issues, and I felt comfortable in any weird and snowy environments that we found ourselves in during the production of this film. To speak to the battery life of this camera, it really impressed me. The rating it seems low on paper, and when you actually get out in the field, I was running somewhere like 2,000-3,000 shots a day on it, or just a lot of video coverage, and I never found the end of a battery. So if you're out there and you're just out in the world, obviously bring a backup battery just in case you need it, but in my experience, we didn't have to switch to a second battery any of the days that we were out shooting. And if you are coming from the Nikon digital SLR side of things, while this is a new battery, it is backwards compatible. So if you have older batteries, you can put them in there. You just can't charge them by USB-C. So those are my thoughts after a few months with the Nikon Z7 II. Really phenomenal camera. So many good lenses to choose from. This 51.2 is amazing. There will be a video coming out on my channel shortly about it. I really enjoyed my time with the Nikon Z7 II, and I suspect that you will as well. There are links in the description below if you're interested in purchasing one of these cameras. That's all for today. Hope you enjoyed the review. Don't forget to subscribe, like this video if you enjoyed this video, if you found it useful, and I'll see you again next time.